At the beginning of the movie, we meet the Kubiks, a young married couple looking to start a family. The young man, Tom Kubik, works as a carpenter, while his wife, Claire, is a successful criminal attorney known for her integrity and fight to uphold justice. One day, Claire leaves the courtroom, brimming with excitement as she had just won a sexual assault case many deemed unwinnable. She gets to her office at the law firm and is welcomed with warm admiration and appreciation by all of her colleagues. Her boss joins her in her office and after congratulating her, promises to make her a partner in the firm. Later that day, Tom takes Claire out to dinner to celebrate their feat. After dinner, they play pool and playfully compete with one another. Tom shows off his skills and his ambidexterity by using both his left and right hand to beat her. A few weeks later, the couple are out Christmas shopping and having fun. However, their quality time is interrupted suddenly by the FBI, who arrest Tom while addressing him as Ron Chapman. Claire is bewildered at what just happened and tries to explain it away as a case of mistaken identity. She goes to Special Agent Mullins at the FBI and demands to know her husband's charges, but is shut down and told that she's not privy to the information as she's a civilian and Ron is charged by the military court, which confuses her even more. She picks herself up and decides to visit her husband at the military base where he's being held. She gets there, and as she waits her turn to see Ron, Major James Hernandez of the Marine Corps comes out and introduces himself as Ron's partner in the Marines Corps unit. Claire is finally taken to see Ron, but when she sees him, she's at a loss for words. Ron admits that his name is indeed Ron Chapman, and that he served in the Marine Corps. He goes on to explain, while crying, that he was forced to change his name and be on the run for the past 12 years as the Marine Corps was framing him for a crime he didn't commit. As the couple discuss this, a young first lieutenant named Terrence Embry comes and introduces himself as the assigned lawyer for Ron's case. Claire takes the young man aside and asks what exactly Ron is charged with, and is terrified to learn that the military corps is charging him with 9 counts of murder of unarmed civilians in a small village in El Salvador while on a secret mission, and that they're asking for the death penalty. Ron admits that he was at the scene of the crime as they were sent by their then commander and now brigadier, General Bill Marks, into the small village to capture a terrorist leader by the name Daniel Cochran, believed to have killed American students in a bombing. Ron adamantly insists he didn't commit the crime and points his finger at Major James Hernandez as the perpetrator. Claire has to collect herself once more. She decides to stick by her husband and help him through the difficult times. She doesn't trust the judgment and youth of the assigned lawyer and decides to lead Ron's legal team. Claire takes time off from her work and dedicates her time to study military law, catch up with the charges, and prepare the best defense. She moves to the base with her sister, Jackie, and she asks around for the best military lawyer in town and contacts Charlie Grimes. Claire convinces Charlie to join the legal team and make him co-counselor. The legal team prepares for the pre-trial hearing. There, they're introduced to the prosecutor, Major Lucas Waldron. At the hearing, Ron pleads not guilty, and the trial date is set. Just as the trial concludes, Charlie decides to test the waters by requesting the judge to entertain their right to a public trial when the time comes, which visibly shakes Major Lucas. Later that night, as the legal team studies the case in Claire's house, Claire receives a call from Major Lucas, who offers Ron a plea deal, which proposes a reduced deal of 5 years in prison in exchange for a guilty plea. Claire takes this deal to Ron, who refuses to even consider it, insistently declaring that he's not willing to do any time for a crime he didn't commit. Charlie and First Lieutenant Terrence try to convince him, but to no avail. And so, the legal team continues their research into the case. They learn that 7 different soldiers from the unit have reported that they witnessed Ron commit the murders. But strangely, 4 of the 7 were killed in accidents. One was killed in a home invasion robbery in front of his wife, who claimed that the military was responsible before she disappeared. The 6th man is Major James, while the 7th one is Troy Abbott, who just got released from prison on an unrelated charge. The team decides to dig deep into these cases and the deaths, as they seem suspicious. One day, as Claire returns home, she's attacked by an intruder. After an intense fight, the guy escapes, and she discovers Jackie tied and gagged. This encounter scares her, but she decides to continue helping Ron, who is shocked to hear of the incident. Ron believes that Major James must be behind the attack and asks Claire to stay away from the case, fearing for her safety. Claire is confused on how to proceed with the case and asks Ron to revisit the idea of the plea, which offends him very much, and even though it's inadmissible in court, he offers to take a polygraph, hoping to alleviate any doubts in his wife's mind. He takes the polygraph and passes it with flying colors, but strangely, after a few days, a random man comes up to Claire in a supermarket and alludes that Ron has special training given to soldiers that helps them beat polygraphs in case they're caught by the enemy. Claire takes this as proof that someone knows every single step they make, and when she discovers that First Lieutenant Terrence goes social drinking with Major Lucas, she fires him, thinking he's the leak. She then goes to Ron and asks him why he didn't tell her about his special skill. He apologizes and assures her once more that he had nothing to do with the crime. Charlie tracks Troy down as he prepares to testify in court to uphold the testimony he gave at the time, and manages to get the true story, that Troy was nowhere around the murders and saw nothing, and that he was asked to lie about seeing Ron commit the murders on tape. At court, a few days later, the prosecution announces that their last witness, Troy, has disappeared and they couldn't find him. Claire presents the recording to the judge and asks that all charges against Ron be dropped as the recording exonerates him while pointing at a cover-up. Major Lucas argues that, without Troy's presence, it can't be proved that the voice is his, or that he gave the testimony without coercion. The judge throws the recording out and deems it inadmissible, which infuriates Claire. Feeling out of options, Claire goes to the media and pleads with the public to come forward if they have any information about what happened in El Salvador. Her boss is annoyed that she publicly linked herself, and by extension, the firm, to the controversial case, and she's forced to resign. Then, one night, as she's taking a walk, a man approaches her and gives her wild information. He claims that the bombing that killed the American students in El Salvador was caused by the American military, hoping to catch Daniel, who died in the explosion. When the military learned of the unintended consequences, they blamed the already dead Daniel and sent soldiers to the small village to find him, to save their image. Claire starts being paranoid about being followed and watched. Charlie finds a bug in Claire's house phone, which explains all of the information leaks, and suspects that they must have put it in while they were installing the phones when she moved in, which explains how they know everything that happens on the defense's side. A few days later, as Claire and Charlie are driving, a car pushes them off the road and they crash. Later, Claire wakes up in the hospital and is heartbroken to learn that she was pregnant and had a miscarriage. After a few days of bed rest, she recovers. First Lieutenant Terrence visits her, and she apologizes for accusing him of being a traitor and brings him back on the team. The first lieutenant then reports that he had researched and found that Major James had a major injury during the bombing of the cafe in Salvador. So, First Lieutenant Terrence presumes there must be a medical record of it somewhere and proposes to use it to prove that the US was behind the killings of the American students. Claire is impressed by the idea and goes to Special Agent Mullins of the FBI to pitch her theory. Intrigued, he looks into it and gives her Major James's medical records. Claire takes the records and approaches Brigadier General Bill at a military gala. She presents her evidence and threatens to release them to the public unless he gets the charges dropped against her husband. The Brigadier warns her to be careful and leaves. As Claire gets back to her house that night, First Lieutenant Terrence regretfully informs her that Major Lucas has requested to have her removed from the case for speaking to the public about a military court proceeding. The First Lieutenant promises to do everything in his power to win the case. Meanwhile, Charlie gets a tip from one of his sources that the wife of the Marine that saw her husband assassinated was now living in Mexico with her kids. So, Charlie leaves Claire a message and takes an impromptu trip to Mexico. The next morning, at the beginning of the court session, the judge declares that the Ministry of Defense has decided to drop all charges against Ron for national security reasons. Everyone in the courtroom is stunned, but for different reasons. Claire and the First Lieutenant couldn't believe what they heard and are extremely happy. Claire hugs and celebrates with her husband, while Major Lucas and Major James are disheartened. Ron is released from prison. First Lieutenant Terrence drives Claire and Ron to the airport for their flight back home. Once at their home, they take some time to celebrate being with each other. Meanwhile in Mexico, Charlie gets to his wife, and she tells him that her husband knew his killer and that they even talked before he was executed, although she doesn't know about what. She then tells him about a stunning piece of information as she describes the shooter. She details that the shooter did some fancy handwork that shows his ambidexterity before shooting her husband. Charlie is alarmed and calls Claire immediately. After making sure she is alone, he reports the woman's testimony and asks her to check her husband's calendar to see where he was the day the woman's husband and the other soldiers were killed. Claire does and sees that Ron was out of town. Ron overhears this conversation and is furious. He admits that he killed the 9 innocent villagers and charges to attack Claire, who runs out of the house. He follows her and carries her back in and gets on top of her to tie her up. Then a mysterious man, who apparently has been following Ron, comes into the house and shoots and kills him from behind, telling him it's revenge for his family. After a few months, Claire and Charlie open a new law firm together. The end. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.